I would love to introduce everybody to Stanley Kite. He's our Emergency Services Director for Craven County, and he oversees the whole entire department, has for many, many years. I'd love to have him come to give presentations like this. It's been a couple of years since you've been here with us, but welcome back.
Just a couple things. First of all, I tried to talk about it. Everybody hear me okay without a microphone? Thumbs up in the back. So. No?
Should be right on the side.
How about now? All right, if you think I'm screaming at you, I apologize, but sometimes I get broken with these things. So, first of all, I'd like to say thank you. We'd like to take the opportunity to talk to the public anytime we can get group settings, because we really feel like, from my perspective, in emergency management, it's got to be a partnership. And if I offend anyone here today, I'd just like to really apologize up front, because I think as we go through this program, you're going to understand where I'm coming from. We don't have the resources, the manpower, or the funding to do every little thing that needs to take place. But when I say a partnership, if you just make some simple plans, and some simple planning on your part, that'll alleviate a lot of the emergencies and distress that we get calls for that we may not have the resources to handle one-on-one. Life safety and survivability is my #1 objective when we're getting highly impacted by any disastrous event, whether it's a hurricane, natural, man-made, whatever. So again, I apologize to you up front. We don't go for all the comforts that you're used to every day, and you're going to find out, if you haven't already experienced that it sometimes can be kind of brutal when certain things happen in your community. So let me just ask, first of all, how many of you were here during Florence? Okay, a whole lot of people were not here during Florence. How many of you have never experienced the direct impact from a hurricane? Never. Okay. You really need to take good notes. I do have some information here today. We're going to have some handouts over here. There's also some refrigerator magnets for some of you to have special medical things, especially if you live by yourself. So if the paramedics show up at your house, they'll look for those refrigerator magnets. That seems like a good time, right? I didn't mean for that to happen. I'm sorry, I have to be in the know. So you're going to hear a lot of noises going on, especially if we got some activity going on. Sometimes it has to be there. But what I'd like to do today is I'd like to walk you through some of the processes, and I'll kind of hit in and out of what we do, because a lot of people say, well, what do you actually do? It's like, I can't take everybody inside the Emergency Operations Center, but this is an opportunity for me to tell you how some of that stuff works. So I'm going to talk a little about incident preparedness, decision making, and incident command. And when I say incident command, I'm talking about the spectrum of local, state, federal government decision makers and how that comes together and how they make decisions. Because, again, if I don't own a swiftwater rescue team, I'm sorry. I'm telling you, it goes around the spectrum. So if I don't have certain things that we own, then we have to have a partnership with someone else. So it could be another governmental entity in the state, it could be another county, it could be the state, it could be the federal government, it could even go on up the chain to the Department of Defense if that's what it takes whereas to get the job done. So there's a lot of partnerships have to happen there. But in order for me to get those resources, I'm just going to be very honest, if there's any elected officials in here, I apologize, but sometimes it takes the political side to shake the tree to get things moving at a faster pace, because I can't wait 48, 72 hours to get some things rolling. So, we want to talk about how incidents are studied and the needs are determined. Understanding preparedness for predetermined events. It's like a hurricane. Hurricanes are awful catastrophic events, but it's one of the things you can plan for. You have time starting right now, if you haven't already done so, to plan for the hurricane. And I say plan for it, don't say just call 911. There may not be a 911. Think about, we talk about understanding the preparedness for those events. We also talk about response based on the local threat. I'm going to say this today, for all of you that like to watch the Weather Channel and you see all the hurricane tracks, those little circles that show here, there, everywhere, and they change every time you look at them. I want you to start today ignoring that track. I want you to listen to the local impact statement. At every one of those briefings, and your local media folks are really good about saying, this is what the National Hurricane Center says, this is what the local impact statement says. And I'm going to get to why I'm saying that in just a little bit. Also, the decision making. How does local government make decisions? How does that happen? We talk about hurricanes. Hurricanes get more notoriety because they're so large. They just cover such massive areas, and they impact so many states and so many people and so many geographical regions. That's why hurricanes take the forefront of a lot of events. The reality is some of these summer thunderstorms can come through and throw down a cluster of these tornadoes that can cause us just as bad of impact in a local community. It may not be as wide an area event, but it could be a local community event. It causes some problems, cause major power outages as well as other utility losses. Now, again, with hurricanes, the tropical system, most often, before landfall, we start experiencing clusters of tornadoes. Was anybody here during Irene? When Irene come through? We sat there and watched. I mean, it almost looked like she was throwing spears. I mean, it was like groups of 3 and 4 spin-up twisters coming off the front northeast quadrant of Irene coming through our county. Fortunately, none of them made landfall. But let me just say this as a reminder, when you start thinking about what you're going to plan, one of those was so close to the shelter in Vanceboro, we were on the phone with the shelter manager saying, get everybody on the floor. Because it really looked like it was just going to dive right into that school. Schools are not exempt, and that's what we use for shelters. There's no structure exempt from a tornado. Think about that. You need to also think about your personal, physical, capable means. If you have a lot of medical problems, or you have someone living with you with a lot of medical problems, you need to understand that a lot of times we have to do a lot of coordination with EMS response during these events when the winds are at 50 miles per hour sustained. Now, I'm not talking about when you have a 25, 35, and all of a sudden you might get a little gust of 50, but when we are experiencing 50 miles per hour sustained winds, we stop dispatching EMS trucks automatically. We then start coordinating one-on-one with the area of ops chief, and I'll talk about that in a minute. That area of operations chief has to make that decision. Can you risk a crew in your truck to take this call, or are conditions so bad you're just going to have to wait? So think about that. If you made the decision to shelter in place in Fairfield Harbor, and you're likely going to have a medical need, and you know you currently have medical needs pretty frequently, that might want to change whether you plan to shelter in place or whether you go ahead and pre-plan to have somewhere else to go during an evacuation plan. Because, again, if I lose that truck and crew, they're not just out for that call, they're out for a long time. And anybody that wants to question that, I'll be glad to take you one day in the spring across the Dew River Bridge when it's just below 35. And I think you'll see those big box trucks that can't take it. And of course, they're in a heightened alert, an emergency hurricane, then you got somebody having a heart attack, the crew's going to be putting pedal to the metal, they're going to be taking unnecessary chances. So therefore, we've had to scale that back and say, we're just not going to automatically dispatch once we get to those certain conditions. Now, again, there is a way, there is a formula, there is a method. Some communities are better prepared for that than the others. Some people have local responders that can physically walk and get to that person and help them until we can get a transport there. But we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Also, local flooding issues are going to begin. And when I say local flooding issues, I get people telling me all the time, I kept watching, I didn't see the water rising. Okay, but what's it doing down the road? Everybody's familiar with the situation you have here on Barclay Road? Down by Catherine Street? What's down there? What crosses under the road there? A part or section of Northwest Creek and Broad Creek actually join the land once storm surge starts rolling in. I'm going to show you some video today. I think it'll be very enlightening on that. This wouldn't work for me earlier, so I may have to show you that later in a different way.
The rain pours and water is all around. Did you raise your utilities, appliances, and such? Install a sump pump. Clean the drains, just in case it decides to rain. Do you know your risks? Have you checked the local plans? You should cover your property with a flood insurance policy. Is your emergency supply kit packed? Is your family prepared? Do they know what to do, where to go, and how to stay safe? Because when the water starts to rise, you must act quickly and be wise. Turn on your radio, listen for updates. And if authorities tell you to go, hurry up and do so. Get to safe ground. Go as high as you can. Do what you need to do. But don't put yourself in harm's way. Just inches of water can sweep you away. Once the water is gone, move carefully. Be on the lookout for dangers you can't see. Animals, debris, and electricity. Do not go home until you hear the all clear. Now when you get home, be aware. Not everything is as safe as it may appear. So before the clouds form, the rain pours and water is all around, get prepared, make a plan, and keep yourself dry. Get started today. Go to ready.gov/prepare. When the clouds form, the rain pours and...
Every computer I work with is a little bit different. You didn't really get that. When the clouds form, the rain pours. All right. throughout the
Running late.
Pay close attention to this one because this happens so many times in our county, it's scary.
It doesn't look that deep, so you decide to drive through it. Bad decision. And it may be the last.
Everybody understand that? So many times, people make mistakes. This is what's under that water that you think is only a few inches deep. You cannot see what's happened under that roadway. You can't see what's happened under that street. Sadly enough, in a hurry, we were out there putting up barricades, and people thought that they had good judgment, that that water's not that deep. I can drive through there. So they were moving the barricades and continuing to drive through it. I mean, you're probably not going to survive if you fall in that hole. I hate to say it rudely, but you're probably not going to survive that. If you notice the rocks, we had to get the Department of Transportation to come out and actually place a physical barrier that could not be moved, because people were making very dangerous decisions and continued. I didn't even want to walk up there close enough to take that picture. That's how dangerous that road was. And again, when you're driving down the road and the road kind of has a dip and you see water, you think, well, it's only a few inches deep. It may be this deep or it may be that deep. So turn around, don't drown. So back to decision making. If you wait until the flooding has started to decide you want to leave and go somewhere else, you may be putting yourself in harm's way just a few miles down the road, or even into another part of the county, or even into another county if you're trying to evacuate. So if you're going to make the plan to evacuate, do it early. Don't wait. Again, that's a classic example of that road. It looks perfectly fine. If anybody says, I can drive through that, that's no more than a spring rain. You see how deceiving that looks? It looks very innocent. But I'm telling you, people could die driving through water. That small of water looks simple. But it's not. Again, that's what it looks like from an angle. All the main structure of that road is weakened so bad, I don't know that it would hold a bicycle. But people make decisions to drive through it. Don't do it. Oh, this one's kind of out of place, but we're not exempt either. This was my office during Florence. Storm surge is real. I'm several blocks from the Neuse River. I'm not sitting right on the Neuse River. Everybody know where the courthouse is? I'm at the backside of the courthouse. That's where this is. That used to be the entrance to the old magistrate's office and downstairs. So storm surge is real. And when it happens fast, it happens suddenly. And when it starts coming in, it's not going to stop until the storm gets into a position where either the wind directions change or something starts blowing some of that water back out of the Neuse River. One of the problems we have here, different than Soundside flooding, is that along the Neuse River, you've also got all this inland rain falling. If we had a tropical storm event where we've got 25, 26 inches of rain upstream, all that water's trying to come out. We're like at the bottom of the funnel. So then when you get the storm surge coming in, that's going to offset the balance scales a little bit for what the forecast is, because the storm surge forecast is based on a wall of water coming in from the ocean and coming up the Neuse River. So there can be some elevation differences in what you were told and what the actual outcome is. In fact, we had about a foot difference on Floyd than what we were told. Heavy winds will damage homes. This is why we tell people, do not stay in mobile homes, do not stay in pre-manufactured housing. This was right here in Craven County. This is not from Alabama somewhere. Actually, 3 people were in that when it happened. and they survived. I'm thankful they survived, but I don't understand it, because that's supposedly not a survivable incident. Heavy winds can damage the homes and utilities, so when the utilities start going down, it's probably not just in your neighborhood. It's probably going to be, if it's hurricane related, it's going to be a wide area damage. And again, that's what makes them so famous, is that they cover such wide areas. Probably the ones of you here in Florence remember looking at the little dot on Tuesday when it was pointed straight at Craven County. They were also showing the impact zone from Virginia Beach to Myrtle, South Carolina. So what did that tell you? That's a big swath of area. And when they say that, that's the zone that's going to get hurricane conditions plus. The other factor is, we were in the northeast quadrant then, and later that night, when the track changed a little bit, it looked like it might go a little further south. That put us more in that northeast quadrant. We had a lot of people returning back home. The data groups that monitor wireless stuff were showing there was about 80% wireless devices moving west. And then that night, after the 11 o'clock forecast change, there was about 25% of those devices already headed back. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's because they're thinking, okay, it's turning south, it's turning south. But remember that swath from Virginia Beach? It just means it's like a big sweeping arm. It's just still going to come through. So that northeast quadrant is still very present. You also still have the presence of severe winds, high winds, tornadoes, communication systems. I get more calls from people because their cell phone won't work. They need cell phone. They need cell phone. I don't control the infrastructure cellular towers. Those towers go down, they may be down for weeks. It may not just be a few hours, it could be weeks. Most often, we're all creatures of comfort and we're spoiled because we think, okay, when you get the power back on, I'll get my cell phone back. It's not necessarily true. It depends on what is damaged in that infrastructure. Some places that I have gone to and helped with have been without communications for weeks. I mean weeks. They're still part of Western North Carolina, a small part that doesn't have good communications right now. And if you don't have to get on the phone and start calling your friends and neighbors and talking about everything that could be going on, think about that. Everybody that gets on the telephone is clogging up the system. Those systems, if they're already damaged, you don't need a whole lot of congested traffic on there. So that's why we tell people in advance, you tell your family and friends who are living out of the area what your plan is. It's okay to call and say, hey mom, I'm okay. Everything's good here. We're just going to be sitting in tight in place for a while. But then get off the phone. Don't sit there and talk about everything you heard, everything you saw on social media. Because believe me, if I could have unplugged social media during Florence, I'd have pulled the plug. We responded multiple times to incidents that were just repeated because somebody else saw something, heard something, or whatever. I showed you this video, this graphic from Isabel in 2003. How many of you were here in 2003? I had a lot of people in Fairfield Harbor to say, Isabel was nothing. Isabel was nothing. I'm using this to demonstrate the difference in the northeast quadrant. The northeast quadrant went more toward Elizabeth City and northern North Carolina as Isabel came onto the eastern North Carolina shoreline. It doesn't mean it didn't have the potential to take you out. This happened just down the river from you. This happened not because of the storm surge coming in, but when the wind turned around and started blowing the water back out, there was 5 and 6 foot waves coming on shore. That home there was right next to the river. You'll see a picture in a minute where the river's in the background. You see how far it is from the river? It took the deck off the front, put it out behind the neighbor's house. The boat was chained to the utility pole. I think the guy thought, well, I'll save my boat, but I'll save my house. And the house was just picked up and pushed back about probably 50 yards from its original resting spot. town of Bridgeton. How could that happen? Remember I talked about those tornadoes and how it just throws them out there, and it's like we're one big dartboard and one of those Mother Nature sites. I'm gonna throw one at you, Craven. Then we get it. This was, anybody know what MC Chemical is up by the railroad tracks in Bridgeton?
Yeah.
If you're traveling north, the big white block building on the right, anybody know what that is? It's a chemical processing facility. They repackage and reprocess materials to be shipped out to other vendors and other locations. When this hit this building, he had 100 cans of cyanide powder in the building. Thankfully, he was following the rules. Thankfully, it was properly stored. Thankfully, it was properly in a contained area, and none of that got wet. Everybody understand what cyanide is, right? Had it gotten wet, I mean, I'm not Superman. Our first responders aren't super people. We would have had a mass evacuation, and we would have been at the mercy of whichever way the wind changed. Well, if you lived in East North Carolina long, you know that every 30 minutes or so the wind sets to change. So it would have been a terrible situation. I thought it was good information for you to know. It might be something that's not even here. It might be somewhere else. Another strange thing about tornadoes, and I use this picture a lot because it was just one of those you stand there and go, how did this happen? You probably can't see very well, but in this graphic, that's the dining room table. That dining room table still had all the placemats and all the settings for dinner. Now, if that's not mysterious, you tell me what is. But yet, it took the corner of the house off. That's how tornadoes can dissect within one community. And it may hit some, may spare for others. But you can't say, unless you're real good at playing lottery, you can't say it's not going to hit you. You just can't say that. The next slide coming up, I'll talk to you about those people who made decisions, and I get goosebumps when people tell me, well, we got in the car, we went over to Walmart and sat in the parking lot. Or we took the RV. We went over and parked. We had people from Pamlico County taking RVs, coming to New Bern and parking in parking lots. Is that safe? Do you think your car is a shelter? I don't think a good chance of survivability in that car myself. That's not from water, that's from tornado. Picked it up like a toy and just tumbled it through the neighborhood. That car come from about 2 blocks away. I'm glad nobody was in it. And it's nothing to do with the make of the car either, I can tell you that. So we had our numbers. I'll just talk about a number of different ones we had here in Craven County, because sometimes people forget. And unfortunately, I've been here for every one of these a long time. Anyway, again, our goal is survivability. During Hurricane Floyd, I had 2 fatalities. Both of those fatalities were after the storm impact. One of those was a gentleman that decided to ignore, I don't know what the heck he thought, 2 firemen and 2 National Guardsmen were doing, this standing in the middle of Highway 43 blocking traffic. But he decided to accelerate and go around him. He runs off into one of those flooded roadways like I showed you earlier, and just like in the video, it swept him off the road. So then I ended up with 6 people in the water trying to rescue him because he made a bad decision. He died 3 days later, not from the accident, but because of all the fluids and water and stuff and all the nasty crap that went in his lungs. They couldn't never get his respiratory straightened out, and he died from that. The second fatality I had was a gentleman that had been rescued, and he took offense because I instructed the National Guard crew. We mixed up fire, local fire, and National Guard and first responders. We paired up medical people with muscle. That's the best way I may explain it. Some of those guys are not medical, but they got good strong backs and good strong arms, and they can help carry people. So we were trying to hurry up and get people out of an area that was flooding very rapidly, so we had them drop him off at the local fire station. so they could return it back into the hot zone and get more people. With the information, we're coming back, we're gonna move you again when things get better, so we can get you to another area where there's a shelter. He tells his wife that he's not putting up with that. He's gonna go back and check on his son's house, which is a few miles further into the disaster area. So he goes to a local person on foot and borrows a boat, a John boat, and he paddles himself over toward the son's house. So that night about 1:30 in the morning, the following morning when we got the call, he still hadn't returned back to the fire station, and the wife by then is upset and wants somebody to go look for him, so we send crews back out there, and he had succumbed to being in the water for too long, I guess, or had a heart attack or something, but he was under a tree limb in the yard of his son's house, down in the floodwater. The boat was rolled up on its side, which John boats are not really equipped for that. And if you're not really experienced in swift water stuff and how to handle small boats in swift water, you're putting yourself at high risk. You really don't need to take a chance. We've had some other ones too, but this is just some of the ones that were really impacting right here on Craven County. I put Matthew up there for a reason. Most people here say, what did Matthew do? What did Matthew do? Anybody remember? What stands out about it? The number of deaths? Matthew tracked west of Craven County, but Matthew rained and rained and rained and rained and rained all over eastern North Carolina. We had similar flooding to what we had for Floyd, but we had so many deaths from people waiting until the water was up on the person to try to get out. And then they started running into problems and they just couldn't get out. So that's why we had so many deaths in North Carolina from Matthew. All of those weren't in North Carolina, but we had our share of them. Talk quickly about some other things, because I know y'all don't want us to hear me stand here until dinner hour, but transportation accidents, chemical releases, there's all kinds of things that when I talk about emergency planning here in a few minutes, you can have a plan that can work for you for a number of things, not just hurricane. Hurricane is the number one tool today that we want to talk about and think about, but all this comes together for you if you think about what could happen in your community, in your county, in your region. I mean, it might be something that happened in P County that might affect us. But if you're not ready for that, how are you going to know what you're going to do and where you're going to go? You know? Major utility failures. I'm not going to talk a lot about chemical and biological weapons because that's almost like COVID. There's not a whole lot we can do about that, but do the best we can to educate the public on what to do for immediate needs. Major utility failures. That means you're going to lose water. That tap's not going to work. And the chances are, if anybody said anything in advance, you're not going to find a local store that's open that will do cash transactions. So how many of you don't do anything except electronic transactions now? Be honest. You ought to stick that plastic card up there, and walk in, do the swipe thing, and do the punch and go. I'm telling you, get your old piggy bank back out, get your little stash box somewhere. Did we get everybody signed in? I think some people come in late. Did everybody sign up for a door prize? If you didn't, I'm going to ask her to pass that box back around. But you see the little box she's got over there? I tell everybody, that's my smaller scale so I can share it with you, but everybody should have a tote that you can put important things in. Because I can tell you, when everything's down, the water, the sewer, the lights, the electricity, you're going to have a need. If you're here, you're going to have a need. If you're not here, you're going to have a need. You're going to need that plastic tape with you no matter where you go, because you're going to need certain things in there. We're going to talk about that. All right. So how it all begins when there's a name disturbance that might influence Craven County. I promise you, we've already been talking about it a day before the public information statements come out. We look at the science, we look at the modeling, we got a set of tools that we look at every morning. And every afternoon, because the last thing I need is to wake up tomorrow morning and I'm behind the timeline to start gathering up, making notifications. We talk about, if I can get this thing to work. We talk about all the events, even if it's not coming here. Even if my friend in Florida is getting impacted, I'm looking at, okay, where's it going from there? What's it going to do from there? How is it going to affect? And the bad thing about it is, you know, everybody says, I'm sure glad it's going to Florida first. Well, stop and think about what you're saying. Remember what I said about local, state, federal resources? They're probably going to be headed to Florida. So if it advances on the eastern seaboard, that supply list just went down. What we're going to have available to us just went down. That's not to say we can't get some, but if you got to wait for it to come from California, that's not going to be overnight. That's not going to be fast. It's going to take a while. So the county manager, as well as the chairman of the board, is always briefed on anything that we think about. We go over what our highlights are on our local plan, as far as who we need to make sure key players are in place. I can't wait until we say, well, we're going to open shelters tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock and then find out that the director or the lead people for that operation are on vacation. Can't wait that long. So we start doing a lot of that stuff before you start getting any public information to you student out. I apologize, I'm working on this thing. Sometimes I hit it too hard, sometimes I hit it too light. So just what I just said, anything that creates damages or significant impacts in other areas, it could pull utility crews, search and rescue crews, heavy equipment, mass transportation. Those things might already be shifted to another state or another area, and then all of a sudden as it crawls on up, we need it too. So it's going to cut down on the numbers. Timing of the event. Now, we're not going to stand up in full-fledged operation days before, because what happens? It's kind of like when you go to the restaurant and you're waiting for dinner, an hour later you still don't have your dinner. What starts happening to the population? You start getting frustrated, irritated, and you're like, well, where's my dinner? And sooner or later you're going to get up and walk out. Well, if we've already got you in a safe area, we need to have that coordination kind of in line with what we think is fair and just to justify our actions. If we're asking you to evacuate or if we're asking you to take action, we need to make sure that decision is made as best as possible with coordination. And when I say the support group, we have to talk with other, whether you like to hear this word or not, elected officials, because the chairman of the board is responsible for the county, but the mayors are responsible for municipal districts. The governor is responsible for state areas. So there's a lot of coordination that has to take place here. All right. We do the briefing, we talk with the shelter management, and everything is based on National Weather Service products. I get people all the time saying, well, look at this app, look at this app, look at this app. I can't do that. I have to use the National Weather Service NOAA products to make sound judgment decisions, not because some self-made weather person out there said, oh, we're going to have a major hurricane next week. I don't have any justification. I'm not saying he's wrong, but it's kind of like using the Farmer's Almanac to predict the weather. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. I got hit with that one time, and I had an 8-ball in the office, and I picked it up, I said, well, let's ask the 8-ball. The odds are just as good. I mean, if you're going to believe everything you see on social media, but I can promise you, the National Weather Service products are based on science, based on climatology, based on history. They put all that together and they go, oh, this is probably going to happen. It's not a might, it's a probability. So we have to look at, okay, what are we going to need for our operational period? And that IAP, and I'm not the federal government, but I tried to make it short enough, it's called an Incident Action Plan. We set that up for 12 hours, 24 hours, and 48 hours. You know why I do 48 hours? Because I'm thinking, okay, it's coming. This is what we're gonna need before the storm, this is what we're gonna need during the storm, and this is probably what we're gonna need after the storm. So if I think I need high-rise vehicles from the National Guard, we go ahead and put that resource request in. Okay? Everybody knows the National Guard is not sitting there dressed on duty ready to go. They got to call them up, get them in, mobilize them, get them together, run them to a staging area, do a briefing, and then I get them. It's kind of like during one of the storms, the Major called me from Kingston and said, look, we're in Kingston, we're going to stay down over here at the Army tonight. I said, Captain, if you stay over there tonight, it was your fault. You're not going to make it to Craven County where the water's rising. I need you tonight. And they pulled into Vanceboro up there about 11:30 that night, and they never got their gear off the truck before they were already injected, pulling people out of the water and making rescues. He told me the next morning, he said, sir, you're right. If we'd have waited, we'd have never gotten this county. It happens. So we also have to look at how bad is the infrastructure? Is it totally out? Is it partially out? You know, we coordinate with utility companies, we coordinate with providers to say, what do you think? You know, for example, we asked Tyler, how long before you think you're going to have FairfieldHarbour back up? They kind of give us a snapshot window. We say, okay, we check with Carolina Water, how much water supply you got left? You know, is it still good? Is it still safe? You know, if we need to start moving mass bottled water and mass MREs, we have to get that stuff to the central receiving distribution warehouse. In order to do that, we have to put those orders out in advance. So today, we'll be ordering what we might need, let's say, for Thursday and Friday. We can't wait till Thursday and Friday. If it comes back online before then, that's great. We can just send it back or keep it in the warehouse. But if not, then we have to set up community pods. Everybody ever seen a community pod? Where we bring out palletized water and MREs, and we'll set it off in a parking lot. I don't have the people to run a local country store. But if people need water, they don't have any water, they can come get water. The only thing I've ever asked is to think about your neighbor who may not be able to physically get to it. So if you get some for him too when you're going back, help them out. This is where you're going to have to come together, not as a community, not as a neighborhood, but daggone it, you just got to come together as a family. It don't matter if I like you today, but tomorrow, if you're in the same boat that I'm in, I got a bottle of water, I'm going to share it with you. Because it's survivability. And hopefully, if you twist it around the other way, he might come up with some food and say, hey, you shared your water with me, so here's some food. Which, at this point, I'm going to bring out something that I got educated on down in the Harlow community that I thought was fantastic. The hardest hit areas of that community, when I kept telling them, it's going to be a week. You're not going to keep toting gas in here in a 5-gallon jug and keep your generator running on this, keep your freezer going. So what did they do? They went around and said, hey, Bob, I'm cooking all the fish and shrimp and seafood that I have in my freezer tonight. Tell your family and friends and tell your neighbors, come by this afternoon before it gets dark because they don't have any power, and we'll feed the neighborhood. And then the next night, they gave it to somebody else. I just thought it was fantastic how the community came together, and they didn't let all the spoiled food go away. They got rid of some of it by consuming it before they actually lost it. And to me, that was smart thinking and good planning for the community. So again, you can't live in your own little icebox and not have communication with your neighbors. This is something that you're going to have to work together as a community, and in some cases like a family, because even if she called me today and said, hey, we don't have any water, I need about enough water for 2,500 people. It's not like I can throw that in the back of my truck and run over here. It's going to take a while to get that kind of water over here. Everybody understand that? All right. So how does it work from the scale of the county outside the box of your community? Craven County is divided by fire response district. Everybody knows that. You know what fire response district you live in. You're in Tri-Community Fire Response District, which in the county plan, the fire chief here will be our local operations chief for this area. They're the eyes, they're the ears, and they're the extra communications that we have that give us a snapshot picture of what's going on in the communities. A lot of times we already know because we get information before 911 went down, but sometimes we get them to do what we call windshield surveys. Check your community, look and see how many houses are major, moderate, or minor. I don't even count the minors anymore. I'm looking for the majors and the moderate because this is a habitable structure. Now, when you say it's a habitable structure, when you got all your amenities, all your power and all your water, I say it's a habitable structure if you got somewhere to stay where you can be dry and warm. That's what I say, but you may take time to get some of those other things back. We use those fire chiefs all over the county. They stand up extra personnel. That's also where I assign swiftwater rescue teams when they come in because they have extra places, maybe on the floor, but they'll take good care of them. Again, when they roll out, you have experience, you have backing muscle with them to help get the job done. I know some people were upset because they're in the Penfield area. I know some people were put out on the road for a little while because there was such an urgent call. We had over 1,800 calls for assistance between here and Bridgeton, in Florence. That may not seem like a big number to you, but I promise you for us, that's a lot of people asking for help. So some people were put out on the road for a little while until they could get shuttled to the fire station. And from there, they would try to do some reunification. Some of them had to go to shelters. Some people found out real quick, I don't want to be on a school floor with a bunch of people I don't know. So some people started partnering up with other friends, family members, co-workers, neighbors, etc. Some people did that. So the county will give out information that is structured on fact. We have people that monitor social media because there's a lot of fiction. There's a lot of misinformation that goes out there. It's not my day. But it might be good, so let's take a minute.
Southeastern Craven County in eastern North Carolina. East Central Monroe County in eastern North Carolina. Carteret County in eastern North Carolina until 3:30 p.m. At 2:45 p.m., a severe thunderstorm was located over Bogue, or 9 miles west of Morehead City, moving north at 55 miles.
So, you might get a little bit of that one. Anyway. What have I done? So we have to plan out the distribution of those resources. The public information officer is charged with public information statements that go out, and they do not go out without the permission of the county manager. First of all, we don't need to be telling you that we're going to be able to do something we can't do. We try to make sure that when we give you information, it's valid information, it's good information. There's distribution of resources. We try to give information out. It may not be at this location, it could be at the POA building. I mean, depending on where we need to make the drop. It might be at the food line parking lot in Bridgeton, depending on how many people is out and how many people got a service, and how many trucks we got that's capable of delivering. Communications, we have a lot of redundant communications, including, I know you have some ham radio operators out here. In fact, we deal with some of them on different levels, but we also have, through our fire and rescue division, we have 3 layers of communications now. So again, that's another reason why those people work very well within our area of operations. Your CERT team, I think mostly has dried up a little bit, gone down under. I hate that. I really do. I hate that because those CERT team members were very strong and very fluid and very influential to help out in the neighborhood and would stay in tune with the training and the information. But we provide information to the control group out of the EOC. We take these combined reports that we get from our area of operation chief. We talk about what needs to happen, what we need to change, what needs to be the priorities, and then we establish the goals and ideas and needs for the next area of operation. So during Isabel, Harlow was highly impacted, the west end of the county was not, so we started moving the resources we had pre-staged in the western end of the county down to help out the folks down in Harlow. And that's how it works. And while they're doing that, then we got a planning team that sits there and works on the next incident action plan for the next operational period. We also have to include law enforcement, sheriff, police chiefs, county finance, municipal finance, our personnel departments, our human resources departments, they have to come up with enough employees to staff these positions in the emergency operations center. County animal response team. How many of you have the lovable, double little furries that you keep with you all the time? Plan for them too. Don't forget to plan for them as well. We get overrun sometimes, but we have, Tom Glasgow is no longer at the Ag Extension office. We have a new lady out there now, but the Ag Extension office takes care. You got any horses in here? Horse people? No horse people? Okay. Horse people are very good about working coordinated efforts together to have inland planned out inland areas. The small animal stuff now is handled under the Sheriff's Department and the County Animal Protection Team. We also work with the Salvation Army, Religious Community Services, local churches, other release agencies like the Craven Regional Disaster Response and Recovery Alliance, State Donations Management. All those have to come together. Samaritan's Purse, Baptist Men, Methodist Men. I'm not trying to leave out anybody. I just can't stand here and talk about all of them all together. So when I say other non-governmental agencies, we work with those agencies that we have vetted that have been truthful, faithful, and do what they say they're going to do in our community. We do not bring in or coordinate with people that we don't have the reputation to be able to support. Transportation components, we use our cart system in an emergency or in a state of emergency. It doesn't matter if we're just coming in to pick up people who wouldn't normally qualify for carts. We'll come do whatever we got to do during a state of emergency. North Carolina DOT has the responsibility for the roads. So when you call me all upset and mad because your road broke, I can't legally fix that because we won't get reimbursed for that. DOT has to take the lead role in that. A lot of that has to happen. All right, make a plan, have a kit. There's some pamphlets over here with good information to tell you how to do that. There's very good information. There's some places called readync.org if you like to play on the computer. That information is in that pamphlet. You got plenty of time to make your plan and make a kit. I'm going to say this very loudly. If you're going to evacuate from FairfieldHarbour, do me and the other emergency responders a big favor. Do not stop in New Bern and get a motel room. You can laugh, but it happens. I had people say my house is on flood, so I ain't got a motel room down at Sheraton or Comfort or Doubletree or Bridgeport, and I'm like, why would you do that? I mean, honestly, if you're going to evacuate, if you're going to go through the effort and have a plan to evacuate, and when I say this, it's going to make sense to you, go west of the I-95 corridor. And the reason I say go west of the I-95 corridor is these storms are very unpredictable. It can go left, it can go right, it can go to Wilmington, it can go to Greenville, it can go to New Bern. So anywhere you play around east of the I-95 corridor in North Carolina, how many of you know about the wind zones? The construction wind zone rating. If you're east of I-95, you're in a construction requirement for a wind zone 2 rating, which ought to tell you something. That means anywhere in that section is subject to wind zone 2 winds, which are going to be at some point 105 or greater. You're not safe in that area. So if you're going to evacuate, make the plan to go ahead, a little extra gas and a little extra time and get west of the I-95 corridor, because if you're not, then you might as well just shelter in place. Okay? I can't be more serious than what I'm telling you about that. Evacuate, if you're going to evacuate, if that's what you need to do, go west of the I-95 corridor. Now, that does not mean they're not going to get wind. That does not mean they're not going to get rain. But it's fact, the further inland is the more intensity that storm's going to lose as it moves inland. But anything east of the I-95 corridor can be disastrous. And I mean, you're subject to more tornadoes, you're subject to higher winds, you're subject to more inland flooding, you're subject to serious loss of infrastructure. I remember one year my wife called me up mad as all get out because she was at her aunt's house in Greensboro and the power went out. I said, well, okay, why the power go out? She said, I don't know. I said, the wind blowing? She said, no. Raining? She said, no. I said, well, be glad you're not here. I mean, again, survivability is your number one factor here. If you need help, if you're sheltered in place, and you feel like you need help, or you have just had it, or you feel like you've got to get out, but you look outside, there's too much debris, there's too much water, there's too much whatever, and you can't safely get out. You don't have a telephone. You don't have a radio. You don't have any way to communicate. The firemen have not come knocking on your door yet. Please place a white towel or a sheet, hang it over the front of the door so most of it's on the outside of your house, and close the door back. I don't want you sitting over the door and looking at somebody. But that tells us that you're signaling, physically signaling. I don't want you doing smoke screens or fires, but put a white sheet of blanket on the front door. Because again, remember what I said about the community camps? When they ride around, they're going to say, oh, there's one. That person needs something. Now, do that only if you're serious about leaving, or if you really have a need. Don't do that because you want to ride down to the store. Okay? And I'll tell you why. Because sometimes, for the mercy of time, I've personally taken a helicopter ride sometimes over the highest impacted areas, and we can spot that from the air. I mean, the way we fly the grids, you can spot that when you fly in a residential neighborhood. You can spot the most time it's going to be flying in the wind. You can spot that, and then you can signal ground crews to get to it and see what's going on there. Also, when they go in, if they can get in and canvass the neighborhood, there's two different means we're likely going to see that and know that you need help. If nothing else, try to get to your local fire station or your local community building, because there's going to be emergency responders and workers going on there. Anybody know what this picture is? I bet my friend over here knows. You know what that is, because you come from Florida, right? I tell you, I do not intend to have that happen in Craven County. That was assisted living. They didn't have a plan. We have to review all our facility plans. We have to go around and check and make sure they're current. We also have adult services making sure they're current. And then we have to have special needs registry for those people who might have special needs. But if they're in a flood zone, and the local impact statement is saying that's going to happen, they're going to be out of here. There's no reason to have people who can't help themselves sitting in that condition. I put this in there for a reason, because this could easily happen here if you make the wrong decision. Now, this particular case was an assisted living facility, but we've also had people calling 911. I'm up on my bed's wet. We've had people that got up on the dining room table. Okay, now I'm moving to the attic because the water's now on the dining room table and there's snakes swimming through my house. So think about this before you make that decision. Think about it. And when I say that decision to stay or go, I'm going to stop. I don't know how much time you wanted me to run today, but I've taken up a good part of the hour, and I'm going to be open for any questions that you might have. But again, I'd like to remind you of a couple things. If you don't remember anything else I said today when you walk out of here, make a personal kit, make a personal plan, and make sure that family and friends know where you are. And again, with that kit, you need vital documents. Take with you tax papers, copies of your deeds, something, because if you evacuated out, and we had a lot of complaints about this in FairfieldHarbour during Florence, But when you come back and you still got your New Jersey driver's license, security is probably not going to let you in unless you have something that shows you have a right to be here. The reason for that is because it's amazing how many people will take advantage of your property when you've evacuated. They'll want to come in and loot and steal and pick up and take things. So we do our best at these roadblocks. And if you don't have something identifying that you're supposed to be here, you're going to get turned around. So I would tell you today, have that kit and have it in a format that if you do evacuate, you take it with you. It talks about food, talks about medicine, it talks about cash. Cash. Have some cash money. I know that seems old school, but I'm telling you, the machines are not going to work. A person's going to look at you like, what do you want me to do with that plastic card? I can't use it. The bank can't. The bank's not even open. Nothing's working. You can make a deal with the guy with cash most times. You might have to lose a little bit. You know, you might pay a little more for an item, but still, have some cash so that you can survive and that you can take care of your needs. Extra medications. Don't sit here and wait till the day before landfall and you know your blood pressure medicine or your heart medicine or whatever you're giving out. Talk to your pharmacist and say, hey, I need an extra vial here to take me over for a couple days in case I have to leave until I can get back. Then if you got that prescription, even if you're in another area, the pharmaceutical companies will work and the pharmacists will work with you to help you out. But if you just walk over there and say, hey man, my blood pressure medicine's out, they're just going to look at you because they're not going to be able to help you. So you got to make that plan. And I can't make one for everybody. I did want to see if I can get back to it real quick. You might have to help me get to it. Let's see. One more quick picture here. I'll get it open. Just thinking about it. Showing up there? Not yet. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know how you get it up there. Daggone it. Oh well. And you may be on something, man. It's like it's searching. I went to a whole different program, but that's okay too. Does everybody know about Know Your Zone? Okay. Valuable lesson for me today. Bring my own computer next time. So, basically, Know Your Zone is, it doesn't matter where you live in North Carolina. In Craven County, I can tell you, we've got hours in there. It's all publicized. You can go to that Know Your Zone website and you can figure out and see, based on your address, what your zone is. How many people in here know your flood elevation certificates? Anybody below 9 feet? Probably not. So if you got 11-foot storm surge coming, what does that tell you? You don't need to be here. I'm not trying to tell you to give up everything you've worked so hard for, but if you're at an elevation of 9 feet or less, and you got 11-foot storm surge coming, now, let me just help you out with storm surge. Storm surge is the level of the water. That does not count for wind on top of that water. So if you got 11 foot and 100 miles an hour wind, and my friend from Florida probably saw a lot of this, that people who thought they were safe, they weren't safe at all. Because once you put that wave action coming across, just like, remember the house in Harlow? That's what happened. When the wind turned around and the waves got coming back, it couldn't make that hard left turn to get back into the sound, so it just ran over the whole peninsula in Township 5. Same thing could happen here, depending on direction, depending on wind. So if you're trying to balance out the inches as to whether or not you're going to be okay, I hope you can figure out the formula to put the wind values, because when you're in a residential neighborhood, winds are constantly shifting, turning, changing. I mean, we had areas over in the Woodrow community of Newbern that the wave action, not the flood water, the wave action beat the houses right off the foundation. It can happen. I know you're going to say you've never seen that happen here, but I'll tell you, as long as I've been doing this in Craven County, I don't think you've seen your worst yet. Because Mother Nature can unveil whatever she chooses, and we can't control that. But we can plan and prepare for that. And again, it's not about saving the house or the garden, it's about saving yourself and your family. Okay? Any questions? Yes, sir.
If something happens on Broad Creek Road, this community cannot egress on that road.
That's exactly right.
The only water transportation. What does that tell you and everyone else what has to happen for something to happen that an egress of this community could have to get out if something happens to Broad Creek Road?
Well, I fully understand what you're saying. The same thing can happen with US 17, the same thing can happen with MC 43. It may not be just here. If it's got you isolated here, there's probably other places as well. And again, that's why I encourage you to think about your personal situation and condition so that you know, don't wait when that's coming if you know that's going to be. If it's just a Wednesdays and Tuesdays, we're going to have that issue.
Yeah.
Listen to your neighbor, don't you?
I didn't want to be part of this. My name's Lee Fawcett. I've done 5 direct hits from category up to category 5 storms. I'm just going to share what Charlotte County shared with us down in Florida. And Charlotte County knows because they're a foot lower than we are here. When they call that first evacuation zone, if you don't know what zone you're in, get out. Now, that wind gets above 55 miles an hour. I don't care what's wrong with you. This guy can't come get you. He's going to have to wait till the storm goes down. If you're going to plan for a storm, plan to evacuate. Get your stuff together that you worry about and be ready to go. They make that first call, get out. Much rather have you sitting here a year after a storm like this because you got out than be attending a funeral a couple of weeks after. Let's not do that. You know, we've done this before. We're going to evacuate. Now, when you evacuate, plan yourself three zones out of here, three routes. Plan to go north, plan to go west, plan to go south, because you don't know where that storm's headed, for sure. But think about when you plan your route, tell the boys and girls what wind speed that big old bridge across that big old Neuse River closes.
No, actually, we do not close the bridge per se, close the bridge.
Really?
We do not. We do not close our bridge because we have the fortune enough that we would close the bridge once the engineer says there's enough damage to the connectors that it's no longer safe. But as long as that connection is safe, we gotta keep that bridge open because we would also be cutting off our Pamlico County friends and other people trying to use the evacuation route. I will tell you, when I tell you it's not safe for us to go across at 50, you surely don't need to be trying as an amateur, and a light vehicle will get blown off the road just as fast as a heavy vehicle. So you don't need to wait till the rain starts and the wind starts. As far as I'm concerned, you're probably 12 hours behind the timeline if you do that. You need at least 12 hours. We issue evacuation order timelines. We issue that order asking you to evacuate voluntary. The first announcement you hear, I'll tell you, there's a 14-hour window built into that. That gives even the latest person that didn't really make up their mind as to what they wanted to do, chance to grab what the necessary needs are, get in the car, and be well outside of the impact zone based on study after study after study. I understand exactly what you're saying about it'd be better if you had two, but the only place you got to go with a second one is around water. So if water's cut this one off, water's gonna cut that one off. If trees have cut this one off, you're gonna find yourself and you're gonna realize you're on a peninsula that can be cut off by water. I don't care if you have 5 roads. If you wait too long as the water comes in, and it's not gonna show up here first, it's gonna show up down there first. I hate to tell you that, but a lot of people want to look and say, well, the water's not that high on here. Well, what's the elevation down there? If you notice as you're coming up on Catherine Street, Paul Creek Road goes down. They did that back in the early 70s and so forth to plan on saving the road. Well, now they're figuring out they don't save the road. If the water comes through there with enough velocity, it's going to take it out anyway. But the engineering thought then was, let the water come up, go on, do what it's going to do, and go back out. When it retreats back to normal level, the road be safe, but that's not true. Okay, any more questions? Let me take this lady right here since I'm close to third.
I just have a statement that in the last flood, that I had a reservation a week early at a hotel in town, on the edge of town, actually in Kansas City. And I spent 5 days there, and at the end of the 4th day, I was told I had to leave because rescuers were coming in and they needed places to stay. I was lucky enough to have a dear friend here welcome me to come back to the harbor and have some place to go.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I promise you, I'm not the one that did that. That was probably at the FEMA level. FEMA was probably taking over by then. Before y'all leave, I got a door prize here you might be interested in. You want to go ahead and just do that drawing? Let's do that drawing before everybody takes off. They're not going to blame me for not winning, so you figure out who's going to win. You figure that out. Don't blame me.
Neil Watts. Just left.
Who?
Just left. Neil Watts.
Is he here?
Just left a second.
Must be
Too bad.
Okay.
Too bad. Too bad. So you tired of hearing what I have to say? Good thing it wasn't a lottery, huh?
This one you also forgot. This is Ross Stanitz.
There we go, right there.
Good job.
Do you want me to package it back up? You can listen to it right now if I like it.
That's part of my question.
Yes, sir.
The same information that comes from those radios all the time. The same information that you get on the NOAA, weather radio, like say a VHF, channels 1, 2, 3.
The NOAA weather radios, that is the NOAA weather radio channel.
Right, so if I'm a boater and I have a VHF radio.
Yes, they rebroadcast that weather information.
Right, so what's on there is the same thing.
You hear it on your marine radio as well.
VHF, okay.
Correct. Yes,
since Florence has, Craven County redesigned the shelter situation. By that, I mean a lot of people were having issues when they showed up at a shelter that were medically challenged, that, you know, the place wasn't either going to provide or allow them to stay. And then, of course, pets today are now certified. So some of the shelters wouldn't take, you know, like that specific shelter wouldn't take an animal. So now if they're in a wheelchair.
The only pet-friendly shelter we have is Ben Quinn.
What?
Ben Quinn, which is out on MLK, Ben Quinn Elementary School.
So, based on, I think, voice.
That's the only approved
Quinn is in town.
pet-friendly shelter. Now, that's not to say you can't make prior arrangements for a boarding place or something else, but the challenge has always been those people with medical needs and special medical needs. So the shelter managers, first of all, again, it comes down to logistics and supplies. They have to evaluate, but that person needs to be already on a special needs registry, and that's through our Department of Social Services, Adult Services section. They make contact with them in advance to make sure either they got a caretaker or we relocate them before the storm. But again, it's tough sometimes when people wait until they feel like they gotta go, and then they don't make that plan as to where and how to get there. And I know that we evacuated, I want to say it was like 130 some people to the carriers. They didn't like that, but they were safe. And then we busted them back in. But, you know, that's what we had to do for those people that needed transportation. Again, I apologize for you being in the James City area, but you probably wouldn't have flooded that place, but during Bertha, that place went without power or anywhere else in the county. Yeah. And resupply generators. If you don't have a good supply of generators, you need to have a plan for that, because it can be very disgusting to you that on day 2 you run out of fuel. Okay, anybody else? If not, I greatly appreciate this opportunity to be here with you today. I hope everybody will just take one thing and learn from that. It's free material over here, help yourself to it because it's free. We want you to have as much as you can have. Thank you.